Welcome back to The World This Week with me, Phil Rees. Well, the arrest of a young Christian girl in Pakistan, she's about 14 years old, has once again brought global attention to the country's blasphemy law. Rimsha Masih, who is said to suffer from Down syndrome, stands accused of burning pages of the Quran, or according to some reports, she burned pages of the Nurani Qaeda, which is a guide for reciting the Quran. She's already spent 2 weeks in jail and is facing the death penalty for actions that have been disputed by her family. Christians have reacted by holding protests, and some have fled their homes in fear. In the past, crowds have killed many accused of blasphemy, and even politicians who advocated a change to the legislation have been murdered. Just last month, a mob dragged a man accused of desecrating the Holy Quran from a police station in southern Pakistan, beat him to death and set his body alight. But in this case, Islamist groups have come to the defense of the girl, agreeing that the charges are false. Here's Charlotte with more.
Religious tensions have been inflamed in Pakistan since the arrest of young girl Rimsha Masih, detained for having broken blasphemy laws. Dispute over Rimsha's imprisonment has sparked protests across the region calling for reform of the laws.
मैं ये मुतालबा करता हूँ कि ये जो रमशा को बगैर किसी वजह के बगैर सबूत के जेल में डाला गया है, बड़ी मेहरबानी करके इस कानून को ख़त्म किया जाए जो बगैर किसी वजह के लोग कर रहे हैं, इल्ज़ाम लगाकर अपने मफाद की खातिर, और रिमशा को जल्द अज जल्द रिहा किया जाए.
This will go on and on and on, and the little minor girl will rot in jail. We want her out of jail. We want her under protection.
In Pakistan, blasphemy against any religion is punishable by anything from a fine to life in prison or even the death sentence. The issue at stake is abuse of the laws, often as the result of a vendetta or neighbourly feud, leading religious minorities in Pakistan to dread being falsely accused of blasphemy. After angry neighbours surrounded Rimsha's house, hundreds of Christians fled the area, fearing retribution.
रात को 11 साढ़े 11 बजे एक आदमी आया यहाँ का ही, उसने ये बोला कि आप ऐसा करें, जितनी क्रिश्चियन फैमिलियाँ हैं आप जल्द से जल्द भाग जाएं, हो सकता है आपकी जान को भी खतरा हो, माल को भी खतरा हो, तो आप जल्द से जल्द चले जाएं. ये कुछ हमने देखा है, लेकिन हम लोग गए नहीं हैं. कुछ फैमिलियाँ थी जो चले गई हैं, लेकिन हम लोग वहाँ पे मौजूद रहे.
However, tension between religious groups has caused fear on both sides.
ये क्रिश्चियन लोग अगर हमारे साथ ऐसा करना चाहेंगे तो कल को हमारे घर को भी जला सकते हैं. ये मस्जिद है, मस्जिद में सब कुछ कर सकते हैं जाके. अगर हम लोग इनको नहीं रोकेंगे तो कल को भी कुछ हो सकता है.
Rimsha's bail hearing was adjourned today and is to resume on Saturday. In the meantime, she remains in prison. Regardless of the verdict, it's likely that Rimsha will never be able to return to her village.
Charlotte Hawkins with that report. Well, very pleased to be joined today by the distinguished scholar, Sheikh Abdul Majid Ali, who is familiar to many of you who watch his show on the Islam Channel. We also have Murtaza Shibli, a Kashmiri writer and a consultant on Muslim issues. On the phone, we have the journalist from the Pakistan newspaper, the Daily Jang, Murtaza Ali Shah. And finally, the barrister, Sibgha Tullah Kadri, QC. Thank you all for joining us. Let me start actually with you, Murtaza Ali Shah. This has obviously captivated debate in Pakistan, and passions are very high on this issue. What's happening now? Where's it going, and how's it going to be resolved?
Yes, there was a hearing in Pakistan's court today about Rimsha's case, and this case is unprecedented in many ways, especially the fact that Pakistan's highest the body of very fundamentalist religious groups has this time come out in favor of the Rimsha, and they have spoken against the madness of Pakistan's blasphemy laws. And these are the very laws which have been abused over the years by clerics, by the members of the public, by the state, and by different groups, whosoever wanted. But this time there is really at the public level, Pakistanis are now aware that the harm that this law is causing to Pakistan, because it has been established now that most of the people who are booked or who are charged or who become the victim of mob justice, they turn out to be innocent, and they never deliberately have done anything to do with disrespecting Islam's holy figures or any text or any personality.
So it's a watershed. This is a watershed case in your view, particularly with the Islamist groups having again gone and defended this girl. But what does that mean? Are they going to take the law off the statute books? I mean, that surely isn't going to happen.
Yes, I mean, this time, as I said, this is unique in the sense that the very Islamist groups who are including Khatam and Nubuwwat, which is this time speaking against the misuse of or the abuse of blasphemy law. These are the very groups which have actually been actively involved in the abuse of and the exploitation of this law. So in that sense, I believe that they are seeing it, how Pakistan is being portrayed across the world, just because of the fact that there are some very mad elements within Pakistani societies who just go on and take law into their own hands. And these groups now, I believe, they see sense in it, that there has to be a proper mechanism, there has to be a very, solid ground on the basis of how somebody is charged and accused, how the cases are processed. Because what has been seen so far that as far as blasphemy laws are concerned, I mean, there is a law of the jungle, which comes into operation because, first of all, people are, booked on wrong charges. And when they go to the police station, there are the members of the public, they can attack them. The judges refuse to listen to the cases of blasphemy laws because they are scared of militant groups. So this time, the same militant groups now are saying that, yes, there is some issue, there is some problem with this law, and this law needs to be tightened up, and it has to be very definitive on how it goes on about prosecuting people. Yes.
Okay, well, I'll turn to you, Sheikh Abdul Majid Ali. I mean, do you see this case as a watershed, in fact, with the Islamist groups coming and attacking it? Because surely it can't be right that a 14-year-old girl is dragged from her home and jailed based on sort of hearsay evidence.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Actually, my views is totally different as far as the way it has been treated with this young girl. Islam does not allow us to treat anybody like that. She is a young girl, but even if it is an old man or an adult or matured man who can understand, even he should not be dealt in that case, in this way. That putting somebody in the prison and then statements are taken, and then, first of all, in Islam, even if a Muslim makes such mistakes, he is questioned properly and his mental status has been studied. And then if he repents or he admits that it is done out of mistake or he was an ignorant or he didn't know that, then he is forgiven. And no such a statement has been, and there is no evidence from the Quran or the Hadith. It says that somebody who has done of this age, somebody who has done that person should be, hanged to death or punished to the death. So
but I mean, are you saying that the blasphemy law itself should be repealed?
Now, first of all, even that is a mystery. Nobody ever known officially as a constitution in Pakistan that what is blasphemy law that they have in the constitution. Some punishments are mentioned, some penalties are mentioned, but most of them are not known to the public. And what is known to the public is just one Maulana or the Imam or Mufti, he gives his verdict and somebody has videoed him through the media and that becomes a law.
Well, yeah, but should it be? I mean, Section 295 of the Pakistan Penal Code does say that whoever by words, either spoken or written, or by visible representation, by imputation, innuendo, insinuation, directly or indirectly defiles the sacred name of the Holy Prophet Muhammad shall be punishable with death or imprisonment for life. Well, I mean, that's pretty clear. I mean, do you agree with that law that it should be there?
No.
Could I talk to you, Mr. Kadri from Pakistan? Do you share that view that this law should be repealed? It's been so abused and misused.
Well, you see, there had been a law about blasphemy during British time. Maximum punishment was 2 years. But see, the funny thing, General Ziaul started all this. This was all done for political purposes, not to protect the sanctity of Prophet Muhammad, be peace upon him. It was not for that purpose at all, because under Islam, under the Islamic law, under the Islamic belief, all the prophets are equally respectable. Now, if you blaspheme Jesus Christ, then it's 2 years. If you blaspheme Moses, then it's 2 years. Other Prophet Muhammad is is to death. I mean, it's a nonsense. It brings ridicule to Islam and to Muslim. This whole thing is politics there. You know, the small minority. Pakistan, mind you, there are 95% Muslims, or more than that. A small little minority of Christians, very few Hindus. That's all we have. And we can't tolerate it because this law is being used to deprive people of their land, to deprive people of all their rights. And I mean, it's ridiculous to say that a young girl has tried to desecrate Holy Quran. Can you imagine, in a country surrounded by Muslims, in an atmosphere of the kind of atmosphere that we have in Pakistan, who will dare do that? Especially when so many Christians have already been prosecuted. The priests have been shot dead in the past. How can any girl do it? And if she's done it, then she's mentally, there must be something wrong mentally. I mean, I always wonder when people ask, what do you think should be done? What should the judge do? I always believe the question is, imagine if Prophet Muhammad was alive. Imagine it happened in his time. What would the Prophet do? The Prophet would have said, first of all, let's find out if this really happened. If somebody has really blasphemed the Holy Quran beyond reasonable doubt, because that's what is needed. Now, secondly, even if it is done, is the person mentally stable? Or did he intend to do it? All these things should be there. But you know, now in Pakistan, you can accuse people of desecration of Holy Quran or blaspheming the Prophet, and you give that sentence. But on false accusation, the person is acquitted. Then the person who accused you gets away free. The law, if they wanted this kind of a law, then it should say anybody who falsely accused will also be given that sentence. I think it's bring disrespect, disrepute.
Well, but do you think the law should be repealed, though?
I think it should be repealed, yes, indeed. Or if not, then it should be treated on equal basis to our religion.
Okay.
Like 2 years, like British did it. 2 years imprisonment, once you prove beyond reasonable doubt.
Sure. Murtaza Shibli, of course, you know, we heard that it was introduced in, I think, 1860 during British colonial rule, but it wasn't used extensively for, you know, a century, indeed, until Zia-ul-Haq, the Pakistani general who ruled during the late 70s and 80s, until he basically brought in laws of Islamization. I mean, how do you read and how do you put that in that context?
I think I have several differences with when people say the law is itself a problem. It's the application of law or absence of rule of law in Pakistan in general rather than particular rule. It is a question of vigilante justice, which we don't see simply in terms of blasphemy law. We have examples, several examples since last year even. I can recall many examples of vigilante justice, of mob getting hold of a person accused of stealing property and being killed on the road, or something like dacoits being killed. So it's not law in itself. I think law is necessary in a situation like Pakistan. If we repeal this law, what will happen is it will provoke more extremist elements to dispense vigilante justice. So, for example, taking example of this young girl, the accusations seem absolutely ridiculous if she is 14 years old and suffering from Down syndrome. According to any Islamic fiqh, it would sound absolutely outlandish to even think of bringing charges against this girl. But at the same time, I think, for example, at the moment when we consider it, she is under police custody. I think it is better for her to be in police custody given the inflamed atmosphere outside rather than allowing people to kill her or getting hold of her. If there was no law as such, it will provoke people to do more such incidents of getting hold of people out of prisons or killing on the roadside, etc. But coming back to Zia-ul-Haq, I don't think we can place blame on Zia-ul-Haq entirely. You have to understand the context of whole thing, how these things have developed. Before that, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, during his reign, we have this watershed moment where Qadianis are declared as non-Muslims because of the belief that they question the finality of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is a natural and organic development towards that one of the reasons I believe for Zia introducing it, while Bhutto was a very popular political leader with a massive support base, he he introduced this non-Muslim clause declaring Qadianis and non-Muslims, and with wider support.
And of course, there are killings that take place even today of Ahmadis.
Yes, but at the same time, there's a wide and popular support on that. So Ziaul Haq's introduction of these laws was a natural and organic process towards that. But the main point here is misuse of this law. And if we see, one of the points I strongly disagree with is that it is portrayed as if this blasphemy law is against Christians. Empirical evidence suggests otherwise.
Yes.
Dawn newspaper conducted a research. No, Shahrbano Tasir conducted a research, the girl of the governor who was killed, that since 1986, more than 700 people have been tried under this law. 480 were Muslims, only 120 were Christians. Then Express Tribune last year did another research between 1990 and 2010. 34 people were killed, extrajudicial killings, who were accused of blasphemy. 17 of them were Muslims. And then Dawn newspaper had a wonderful analysis of saying that most of the accusations of blasphemy are committing blasphemy happens between two Sunni sects, Barelvis and Deobandis. They accuse each other of committing blasphemy. So just narrowing the focus on Christians.
But why is the law then so, I mean, fair point taken there about it not being why is it such an explosive issue? Why does there so many passions that revolve around this issue between whoever it is?
It's not because of the law. It's again a very wrong conception and wrong understanding of the whole history. When there was no law, for example, or when British had in 1860 when they introduced this law, in 1927, for example, a Hindu group, anti-Muslim Hindu group, Arya Samaj, published a book called Rangila Rasul. It was against Prophet Muhammad, very openly blasphemous. The case went to the courts for 5 years, but the publisher Rajpal was acquitted, and ultimately one youngster, Ilmdeen, killed him. He stabbed him because he believed that there was a blasphemy had been done. And Ilmdeen was he was hanged to death, and he is still considered as a great person.
I mean, Sheikh, let's bring you in here. I mean, Sheikh Abdul Majid Ali, what do you see the resolution? I mean, we've heard the point there from Murtaza that if the law was repealed, there would be a greater incentive for vigilantism and people to take the law in their own hands. I mean, what do you think should be done in Pakistan about this now?
No, I agree with the brother when he says that if you have the law, then there will be some kind of discipline in the society. This is one thing. Now, my point is different. When you have a law, who is implementing it? How it has been implemented? And how the case has been studied.
Yeah, but police chiefs are too scared to bring in the law when they face mob rule.
And as I can go further, that there are these laws or the constitution which is in India or Pakistan or in Bangladesh, when it comes to the politicians, when it comes to the rich politician, when it comes to a powerful politician, the rules are overlooked. The constitutions are overlooked and the crimes are overlooked. But when it comes to a person who is just making his livelihood, maybe struggling 24/7 just to have, one meal for himself and his family, all the laws are put and implemented on him.
So where does the malaise lie in your view?
According to me, that this girl has to be, and I also agree with him that if she's under the custody of the police, she is safe.
Yeah, but that's quite a frightening thing to say for a country, that it's actually better to be in jail.
No, not in jail.
Well, I mean, under police custody.
Yeah. But
I mean, that's a sad indictment of Pakistan, isn't
Yes,
it?
absolutely. When you look at Pakistan at the moment, when you see the deterioration of law and order and other political institutions, it's a very frightening prospect, but that is the way it is. But I agree, there are two ways we can deal with this. I agree with Barrister Sibgha Kadri, who said earlier that there should be a clause, equal punishment should be there for the people who accuse falsely other people, one. Second, we could have greater dialogue, as Murtaza was saying earlier, although I did not agree with his analysis at all. I thought that was very fraught with several generalizations about Pakistan. Okay. But the issue is, if there's a greater dialogue among Muslim groups, between them and Christian and Muslim groups and Muslim and Hindu groups. There is a better dialogue. This will create a greater understanding. But for that, Pakistani society, Pakistani state has to start dispensing justice to its people in other arenas of life as well.
Yeah, to have a greater sense of law. But let's just widen this. Sibgha, Tullah, Kadri again. I mean, is there any sense that this reflects a malaise about the very nature of Pakistan itself, in terms of its identity and the fact that it has to look at laws like this to reinforce its identity as an Islamic state?
Well, yes. See, what I was saying earlier, and I heard what is being said, is that, well, the law should not be repealed because that would mean that there will be no rule of law, that people will take the law in their own hand. That's not right, because you see, the point is this. First of all, it should be Islamic law. And under Islam, every prophet is to be respected equally. Jesus Christ can be condemned and abused, and only 2 years. Moses can be, Abraham can be. That's Prophet Muhammad. And this is all just to play with the sentiment of the people. Secondly, even in this country, if there are serious matters, then you need the consent of the Attorney General, the consent of the DPP. There, an SHO starts the prosecution, a small police officer. There should be consent of chief police officer or commissioners, something like that. There should be safeguards on it. Because the whole thing is, and when somebody said just now that there are only 120 Christians and about 400 Muslims, imagine 120 out of 5% and 400 after 95%. That this is nonsense to say it's not against Christians or minority. 120 Christians means a huge number proportionately of the entire Christian population. So this law is meant to be used. You see, I mean, what is happening now?
But what's the purpose of this, though? In your view, the purpose to what? Reinforce Pakistan's Islamic identity?
It's not to reinforce Islamic identity. It's to exploit Islam for a particular purpose. Ziaullah did it for the purpose of martial law. Today, Taliban are using Islam for their purposes. And you know, Taliban are using the same thing because they are the places where there are priests there, where there are graves there, but they say, oh, that's anti-Islamic. That's they are Wahhabis. So, I mean, the whole thing is Muslims are being divided. And the state should take over the situation. To be said, if there is no law, then there should be, people will take the law in their own hands.
So playing politics...
Only when the state does not put its foot down.
Okay, Mr. Kadri, so playing politics with faith, would you agree that that is perhaps behind all of this?
Definitely they're playing politics with the faith. And they are using the emotional feelings of the people, and there are so many other major issues in Pakistan which are overlooked by politicians, and they bring these issues so that they can win over, they want to pass their time as a, government body or something like that. So there are so many more other issues are there. And with showing sympathy for this girl, I'm saying, when it is medically proven that she is not stable, plus her age, plus if she has agreed that if something has happened, which I don't know, because no media has ever given any proof, then this girl, if she has agreed that if it has done by mistake, then Islam says that she should be forgiven.
Okay, well, on that note, I'm afraid we have to come to an end there. Thank you very much to all our guests. A big thank you to you at home for watching. We'll be back next week with another edition of The World This Week with me, Phil Rees. Bye-bye for now, and Assalamu alaikum.